The sport of off-road racing is full of incredible stories, wild characters, legends, and even villains. We cover it all on offroadracer.com, but there's only so much we can put down in an article. Sometimes we have to dig a little deeper, and that means sitting down with some of our industry's most influential characters and hitting record. Welcome to the Off-Road Racer podcast, a Mad Media production, made exclusively for offroadracer.com. Each month, we'll go beyond the dirt into the homes, shops, and lives of the most interesting and game-changing icons of our sport. You'll hear about their history, success, failure, and everything in between as we pull back the curtain and reveal the stories of their lives. I'm your host, Matt Martelli, and this is the Off-Road Racer podcast. I'm Matt Martelli. This is the Off-Road Racer podcast, and I'm here with a good and longtime friend, Ryan Arciero. What's up, champ?
Man, I'm so stoked to be here. Thanks for asking me to do this. Anytime I get a chance to see you and the boys is phenomenal, because I know you guys have been working your asses off with everything you've been doing. So thank you for having me be part of this.
Yeah, as have you. I mean, one thing I'm always adamant about is like, a lot of people know who you are now. They're like, oh, Ryan Arciero, he's won a bunch of races, right? And multi-time champion off-road racer. But I don't think a lot of people know the history of the Arciero family, which is super interesting. So, let's get into that. I mean, you were born into a family like, what, 3 generations of racers?
So I'm the third one. Started with my grandfather back in the early 50s. So what are we going on? Almost 70 plus years of being in motorsport. My grandpa had a good friend of his that enjoyed Ferraris, and kind of got my grandfather hooked on him. He was a construction buddy of his, and my grandpa just fell in love with it. And he still had his construction company at the time. So when he was trying to race, even back then, his insurance companies were like, well, we're not going to insure you for your jobs if you're driving the car. And he's like, okay, no problem. So he says, I'm going to own the cars and have people race for me. And so he got involved in sports car racing, and locally within Southern California. At the time, it was big, and he helped start the careers. A lot of the guys in their early years of racing were racing for him. Dan Gurney, Parnelli Jones, Bobby Unser, Al Unser, Michael Andretti at the time, Phil Hill, Jimmy Clark. All these guys,
Wow.
all these guys went on to have massive careers, and a lot of them got their starts with my grandfather in sports car racing, and so he kind of cut his teeth in the sports car side of things, then got involved in Indy cars in the late 50s, started going back to Indianapolis, and just absolutely fell in love with the sport. And my dad and my uncle at the time, fast forward just a little bit through Indy car racing, and they got introduced to off-road back in the early 70s. And my grandfather was another construction buddy of theirs that introduced him to it, and all three of them completely fell in love with it. Starting out with motorcycles and racing out in Cal City, racing out in Barstow, obviously racing in Parker, and then eventually down in Baja. But they just completely fell in love with it. During that time, my grandfather continued with his IndyCar program, and so when I came along, it was pretty incredible and fortunate to be able to see the IndyCar side of things and how that's transformed into what it is today, and then being fully immersed in the off-road side of things, watching my grandfather do it, watching my dad do it, watching my uncle do it, and then watching my dad, be successful with Toyota, being a factory driver for Toyota with Cal Wells and PPI, and really getting a chance not necessarily to see off-road in general, but to see how a proper program is supposed to be put together. What does it take to go win?
Right.
And I remember as a kid growing up, it's just watching that and just absorbing it. And my dad was doing short course racing with my uncle, and all I can think about, I see him win a race, or I see my uncle win a race, and they're up on that podium, they're holding that trophy up. That's what I want to do.
Sure.
I want to do that, and I dreamed about it my entire life until I finally got the opportunity to do it.
It had to be pretty incredible, like going from IndyCar and being kind of on the inside loop and everything as a kid, and you're like, hey, that's Unser, or you know what I mean, like, and then too on the flip side, going, off-road is much more approachable, right? Like
100%.
You just walk up to Bob Gordon and you're like, hey, dude, can I get your autograph? But what was that like growing up in that era?
It was phenomenal. I remember the first time I went back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with my grandfather. We went there for opening day of practice, and we went to go see he had 2 cars at the time that were running that year. And so him and I took the red eye. We flew back to Indy, went into the garage area, and I stayed with them the entire time. And it was amazing. So this was in the 90s when I went back there for the first time. And to see the amount of people there, one, for opening day of practice was massive. The crowd that was there just for opening day of practice. And 2, to see all the people stop him to want to say hi to him. Because you got to remember, he had already been going to the Speedway since the 50s. And so he was a mainstay within that racetrack and within that community. And so they had a lot of the old timers that would work, the crowds or work the gates and stuff there. And everybody wanted to talk to him and say hi to him. And it was just, all these drivers that would come up to him and like go out of their way and, hey, Frank, how you doing? What's going on? Good to see you.
Right.
And we only stayed there for the day. So as soon as practice was done, we turned around and we parked our car was literally probably 100 yards from the garage area. It took us a little over an hour to walk that 100 yards to get there because everybody was coming up and just wanted to stop and say hi to him. And to me, that was like, it gave me goosebumps at the time. It's like, man, that it's just so neat to be able to see that and witness that and see what the impact he's had on that sport and being involved with that sport. Seeing what he's done with a lot of these drivers in their young careers and what it's transformed into. And he was one of the original founders of, at the time, was CART, which turned into, to Champ Car, which turned into IRL. And now, obviously you're back to IndyCar racing.
Right.
And so he was one of the original founders with Roger Penske, with Carl Haas, with Pat Patrick. And so he was there in the very beginning. And it's just so neat to be able to see that. And it's a different landscape than what we do in off-road racing or how we do it. And it's so neat to be able to see the different dynamics between road racing or IndyCar racing, sports car racing, and then seeing the dynamic in off-road. One's not better than the other by any means at all, but it is neat to see the differences between the two.
Well, for us, there's always lessons to be learned from other forms of racing, right? And that's why, I think it's remarkable that you had that upbringing, and now, like, I can see the application of it now and what you're doing with 1.9. We'll get into that, but I think it's important to take those lessons from other forms of racing and apply them to off-road racing.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's a lot that I've taken and learned from what I've done and what I've seen in other forms of motorsports besides off-road, with whether it be IndyCar or sports car racing or even NASCAR. And it'd be stupid not to, because you watch those programs, you can just sit back and just go to the garage area now to an IndyCar race or to a NASCAR race. Just watch how the team functions. Watch how the owners functions. Watch how the driver functions. There's checks and balances to everything. There's so much organization and stuff you can take from what they do proper there and take it and move it over to our sport and kind of make our sport even better, make it more organized. Now, at the same time, too, off-road racing's real family. It's family generated. There's people. This is what they do for their fun. This is their golf. They don't go play golf. They go off-road racing, and that's completely okay too. You get your backyard hobbyists that just want to go out there and enjoy the time with their family and go race around the race course. I think that's phenomenal. There's a home for them in off-road racing to be able to do that, and then you take it to the top level with trophy trucks, and it's those guys are there for one reason and one reason only, and that's to win. That's a different mentality, different mindset, different race program. Obviously, comes at a different price than just going there with my family and enjoying going to the California 300.
No, totally. It's an interesting dynamic, because I think that ultimately is one of our strengths is that we have a culture around us, right? And it is attainable, right? And as much as, the trophy trucks are the show, you can go buy a UTV from a dealership now, and with a few, safety upgrades, you could be out racing.
To me, that is one of the most phenomenal things about our sport. It's open to anybody, and I think Sal Fish had said it way back in the day too. That it is from the guy that's pounding nails to the guy that is a professional racer. This sport opens its arms to the entire gamut of what like, to your point, to be able to just go get a stock UTV. Go buy it off the showroom floor, like to your point, make a couple of changes to it, and you're actually racing. And you're racing on the same race course on the same weekend with all the big guys. that's phenomenal. There's not a whole lot of sports you can do that. So,
no, absolutely not. Well, you didn't just have success in off road, but you also did some time pavement racing. What was that like?
I did. I wanted to. I had a lot of success in off road. For some reason, it was, the road racing side was kind of calling me. Like, you know what, I in the back of my mind, I want to give this a try. I want to see if I have what it takes to go do it. And so I started the process with doing open wheel racing. I went to, at the time I went to the Russell driving school, because in road racing and in NASCAR, you got to be licensed to be able to, you have to start at the bottom. You have to be licensed to continue to move up to the rung. Unfortunately, in off-road, that's not the case. And there's times I kind of wish they took that mentality, just from a pure safety standpoint. But there's also something to be said about the ruggedness of off-road where anybody can do it. But so I took my hand at road racing, started with the Russell School, did their techniques of racing, their advanced racing class within a week of each other at Sonoma. At the time it was Sears Point, phenomenal racetrack. And then did their very first, they were already 6 races into their series. It was a USAC sanctioned series with open wheel, almost like a Formula Mazda. And so I came in at race 6, I came in at race 6 of 12, and so the second half of the season, I won 4 of the 6 races, and then I finished second, and they ran me out. They forgot to put fuel in my car in the last race. Oh, God. I ended up finishing third in the points and got Rookie of the Year that year. And I'm like, okay, I'm up now. I think I have what it takes to move on to the next level. And I'm like, I'm going to keep going. So I was invited by, at the time it was Barber Dodge. So Barber Dodge had a pro series that raced with the Indy cars in the big weekends. Mm-hmm. So they called me up and they invited me to a test in Sebring. So I flew to Florida, and so they had, I think, 2 seats at the time open, and go to the test. I think there was 15 of us there. Do the test, which to go to Sebring and do that at Sebring was pretty cool. Yeah. I get home, I get a call from them. They're like, you got one of the seats, and so at that time it was $200,000 to do the season, and which doesn't sound like a whole lot right now. It was a lot then, but you're also on major weekends. You're racing with the IndyCar guys, so you have all the IndyCar teams watching you, and so I'm like, okay, I got to find this money. I got to find it. And so I tried. And so they kept calling me like, where do we sit? I got to have some answers. So I said, I'm trying. And I eventually had to pick up the phone and make the phone call, and I had to relinquish the ride. I couldn't find the money. And it was like, it gutted me. And so reality kicked in, and then an open opportunity came up in off-road with General Motors and with Herzog at the time, and to do a factory-backed Chevrolet program with the Vortec, with the Trailblazers. And so I got a call to kind of come back to off-road and do that. And I'm like, okay, of course, you're not going to turn that down. There's only been, at the time, there's only been a handful of drivers that ever raced for a factory before in our sport. And so I'm like, yeah, 100% sign me up. And so that's who was Larry Ragland, Brian Stewart, Mark Miller, myself. I think I said Brian Stewart too. And we had Becky Freeman come in for one of the races too, which kind of cool. And then Ricky Johnson as well. And so we had an incredible team. And that was, that kind of, as far as the factory side of things and a proper race side of things with the off-road stuff, that kind of launched me into another realm.
Yeah, what was that Aero, the Vortec truck? I mean, it was a very unique truck too, because it was 6-cylinder, right? So it had this very unique sound. I remember, going to races and you would just hear this thing screaming, coming in to wherever you were at. What was it like racing with that group of people?
It was, it was eye opener for the sense that you really got a chance to see it, what a proper program should look like in off-road racing. So for me, going back to what we talked about with the IndyCar stuff and seeing how they do it in IndyCar stuff, I'm like, they've just taken how it's supposed to be, and they just brought it to off-road racing. So this is an elevated program that you don't typically see. And so to be a part of that and to be able to listen, I mean, we're working with GM engineers. So to be able to work with them and understand and then give them feedback based on what we're seeing and doing. GM had contracted Roush at the time. Roush built the motors, and which was a pretty neat. I mean, obviously you think of Roush, and Roush is fully Ford, and so it was a unique situation that GM contracted Roush to build those inline 6 engines. Right. But they were phenomenal. They were phenomenal engines. They didn't have as much horsepower as the V8 at the time. like that the Duralast truck did with Ashley and Smith, or like the Herbst had with the patent engines. But they were, I mean, it was a phenomenal engine that was very reliable. And especially we were on the heels. Our goal was the Baja 2000. That was the whole reason to put this program together, is to have two trucks to try to go win the Baja 2000. So you needed reliability. So, we spent weeks and weeks and weeks in Lucerne, on soggy dry lake, just running and running and running. Had transmission failures with the turbo 400s at the time, but once again, you're seeing how it's done right to be able to figure out the problem is, fix the problem, and get back out, because the failure is not an option.
Right.
So you have to figure this out. And we actually did at towards the end of that whole program before the Baja 2000, we did a mock Baja 2000 race, and where we took one truck and we went all day, all night, switched drivers out, and did an entire Baja 2000.
It's funny because I talk to people now about that era of the amount of effort and testing that was put into the vehicles of that era, and everybody was doing that. It was like, I remember talking to Ivan about him winning the Baja 1000, and then Cal looks at him and goes, good job. Yeah. Don't leave, because we're going to race the truck home as a function test.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Ivan's looking at him like, dude, I quit.
Yeah.
But I think that's an important thing to highlight, because, a lot of people don't know that. Like, now, testing is very narrow, and it's budget, right? It's like, it's difficult to say, oh, we have a new shock, or we have a new caliper, we have a new whatever, and we're going to do a 24-hour test on it and really put it through the paces. So oftentimes what happens is we do light testing, and then the race is the test, right? Which is it's gambling.
It 100%
big
is.
time.
To your point, it is. And we have this conversation within 19 Industries and with the Herbst. If we want to make a change, most of the time we're doing it at a functions test, getting ready for the next race. So we're just trying to see if, but really that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to set up a proper test and to spend the time and money and effort to do it. But also, to your point, that costs a lot of money to do that. You got to have a fleet of guys out there. You got to have a protocol of what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do, and that comes with a lot of parts and pieces. And usually, that turns into a 1, 2, 3 day test. Where are you going to do it at? What are we trying to go win the Baja 1000? Well, the test should be down in Baja, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand. Like let's just talk trophy trucks. Like, there's a cost per mile, right, of just operating it, right? So if you're function testing tires, or if you're function testing shocks, or whatever is your function testing, you got to start with that hard cost of like, what is the operational cost, per mile, per hour, per day of that vehicle. Add staff, you know what I mean?
And
plus. Pretty soon you're like, hey, it's $50,000. People are like, what do you mean? And I'm like, no, listen, it's these vehicles are only designed to do so much mileage period in their entire lifespan, and you're going to use a portion of that for testing.
And especially with, like the biggest thing you're concerned with is the engine. So the engine only has so many miles on it before it has to come out and get rebuilt. So you're kind of fighting that timeline, and you're trying to figure out, and most of these teams, they really have one engine. Our Gibbs engines are, they're a $140,000 engine. To rebuild them on the minimum side to rebuild is $35,000. And that's the minimum. And you're doing it every 1,400 miles. You're also trying to time, like, okay, how many races do I have on it now? Okay, then we want to do this test. So that means if I pull this out, do I have enough time to make the next race?
Right.
So you're playing this gamble of time and how to make this work. And so you're very conscious on how many miles I'm putting on it, because once again, it's $35,000 minimum. If everything's good, it's $35,000.
Right.
That doesn't count the cost of pulling the engine out, shipping the engine back to North Carolina, which is where it has to go. That's not included in any of that.
Right.
So it's expensive.
It's interesting too to watch your evolution, and it's exciting for me, us being friends, but also, whenever I see people that I think have the right knowledge base go into the right position. Like, I'm always a big proponent of that, right? Because it's like you've had this amazing experience as a racer, as a championship racer, winning Baja, winning now 4 times the Vegas Reno race. So like you clearly as a driver, you've been inside of what a winning program is, right? And then, taking on this responsibility and this new role of running 19 Industries, which is, so if people don't know, like the Herbst had their whole program that also they were running other people's programs, but now it's been formalized under 19 Industries. So it's really cool to see that like, just in that conversation, the knowledge base that you have and the understanding of like, there's a lot of moving parts. It's all got to work together. Just dumb things can ruin it. Supplier can't get you the part. It gets you a bad part. That could ruin not just a race, but a season, and all these moving parts. And at the end of the day, the goal isn't just to win, but now you have X amount of customers and they all need to get to the racetrack and they all need to have success in the vehicles, right? And have the vehicles and the logistics of like the coming Baja 1000 race, right? The logistics of it's a war, right? And now, how many trucks are you guys taking to that?
So we'll bring down. We're Terrible Herbst is racing 3. We're going to bring 8 trucks down total. That means the other ones are identical to the race trucks they're going to pre-run with. So we're going to bring down 8 just for THM, and then we have 1, 2, 3, another 4 more of our customer vehicles going down. Some of them are going to take care of some of the things themselves. Some of them we're going to help them out with. But just the Herbst stuff alone, if you only talk about the Herbst stuff, that's a animal in itself.
Yeah, it's a 4-truck race program.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
We've just started the process of going through logistics and what you're going to do. To your point about to try to put a logistics program together for the biggest race we do all year long, and try to figure out, okay, how do I, where are our pits going to be? How many people have to be at each pit? On the minimum side, you need 10 people per pit. To be able to do what we do to have a successful pit stop. You should have a little bit more, but 10's right around the minimum. And it's like, who are those people going to be? Are they experienced? Do they need to practice? What are they taking down there? How much fuel do they need? How many tires do they need to be able to support all the trucks coming in?
Where do all the spares go?
Where all the spares go? Yeah. Are there any chase vehicles that are going to be coming in to help those guys? It goes on and on. Where are the chase vehicles going to go? What time they need to leave? Where are we staying at each one of these different spots? Do we have insurance together for all the vehicles? I said it just goes on and on and on and on. And unlike any other form of motorsports, it's so unique because there's so much that goes into the planning of these things. And for us, we put together an initial plan, and then we kind of just get it down on paper, and then we start moving chess pieces. It's like, okay, this is what I see now. This is what I vision, and that's not going to work. Let's start moving things around. So it's an evolution all the way up until race day. Because even when you go down and pre-run, the pre-running, we get the information back for some of the drivers, like, okay, this is how long it's taking us to do each section. And I'm like, man, we're off on our calculations, so now we got to move guys around to be able to compensate for it. So you're making changes all the way till the green flag drops.
Right.
But that's what makes the sport pretty interesting, especially we'll have 50 guys in there, probably more than that. It's like, we're going to make sure all 50 are going to be safe first and foremost.
Yes.
And they all know where they're going. They all know what they need to do. And it's a choreography.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Like, why did you could have, you have the accolades now where, there's a lot of people who would want you to drive for them. Right. And you could have just been like, I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't call it phoning it in, but way less stress, way less pressure, way less responsibility. Why did you choose to take on the responsibility of 19?
I was approached. It was been about 2 years ago. I was approached by Troy Herbst, and it was at the Baja 1000, and he was interested in kind of restructuring the company a little bit. Mike Smith, because it used to be Herbst Smith Fab, so Mike wanted to kind of take more of a retirement role, and kind of his son Zane at the time, and still to right now, Zane's taken on and has been phenomenal in NASCAR. Yeah, and so Mike wanted to really concentrate on Zane and his career, and so Troy sought to kind of restructure everything. Troy kind of wanted to pull the Herbst name off the company in itself. He wanted the company to kind of stand on its own. And so we're kind of toying around with names and what we should do. Well, let me back up for a second. When he first approached me and asked me, he says, hey, would you consider coming on and kind of taking over all the operations? And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I never thought about that. And I said, can I get back to you after the race? He says, 100%, take your time. So get to the Baja 1000. I get home and I just start thinking, and I start thinking, and I'm like, is this the right thing for me to do? Because just like what you said, it's way easier for me just to go drive with somebody, and a lot less thought process to it. And I'm doing what I love to do, is driving anyways. And but I start thinking more and more of it. I'm 51 now, and I still feel like I have a lot of races to win. I still feel like I'm extremely competitive. So that part's not stopping. So that's one of the first things I told Troy. I said, if I decide to do this, you have to know I'm not done racing yet. And he says, I don't expect you to be. I'm like, okay, good, perfect. We're on the same page. And but I think I said I think I'm up for the challenge. And I just started thinking to myself. I said I feel like I can have a major input within this company. Todd Gorsuch has been with the Herbst since he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
Todd is a heartbeat of that entire company, and everything that's taken place with the success that they've had now with the customer builds. He puts his heart and soul into that company and into his customers and into THM. And so without Todd, this whole thing doesn't go round and round.
100%.
And so I didn't want to come in and be that guy. It's like, hey, I'm going to push Todd around and we're going to do this and that. I'm like, he has so much pride in his job, and he's, it's like, this is a guy that, like, what can I do to make your life easier?
Sure.
And that's one of the first things I asked him. I said, where are your problems? Where are your issues? What are you struggling with? And let's start moving some pieces around so we can take some of that burden off of you, and we can start making this into a really, really big deal. And so Todd was super excited about it, because there's a lot of stuff that he doesn't care about, like on the business side of things. It's just too much for him. He wants to concentrate on the technical side of things, which he should. He's super smart with that. And so we operated starting with as Herbst Smith Fab, and then January 1 of this last year, or this year rather, we made the change over to 19 Industries. And then people ask me, well, where did 19 Industries come from? So we're trying to think of a name, and we're like, okay, Herbst want their name off, but the 19 has been synonymous with Herbst since they've been involved in off-road racing. Even before that, it was big with Jerry and boat racing as well. So we're like, what if we did a playoff the number 19? So the Herbst are still, there's still some connection there.
Sure.
So I told Troy, I said, what about 19 Industries? And he's like, I love it. He goes, let's do it. So here comes Born 19 Industries, and so with 19, obviously, Terrellborgs Motorsports is a customer of 19,
right.
And same with Kyle Washington and the 32 truck I race, and same with Justin Blauer, same with Greg Nunley, and same with all the new builds, Joe Brain, all the new builds that we go through too. So we have the manufacturing of the truck side of things, we have the prep side of things, we have the parts and inventory side of things, because a lot of our customers, they'll order parts for us. We send them out to them, or they prep up themselves. So there's so many different aspects of this company that it just became more and more interesting for me. Plus, it's an industry that I love and have a passion for, and I feel like I can have a difference or a change too, and to make this thing and grow and even be even better. I mean, as we sit today, we just delivered chassis 35 to the Hardens for Cole.
I saw that.
It was supposed to be ready for the California 300. We ran into a couple of issues with supply on some parts, but Cole is super excited to drive this. And that kid's fast, man.
He's fast.
I'm so excited to see him getting this thing. So
he just did great at California and almost won.
Yes.
Jack got him by a little bit
for sure. And Jack's coming too. Jack is going to be chassis 37, so nice. Jack will have one as well. So he's super pumped and excited. And then so chassis 35 we just delivered. We're sold all the way to chassis 45 right now, which is pretty amazing. The majority of them are trophy truck specs, and we have 3 trophy trucks in the mix as well. And the next one coming as a trophy truck will have a Dugan's Big Block in it, which is I'm pretty excited. We've never had a Dugan's Big Block in one of our chassis. They've been the Gibbs motors, and we put a patent Big Block in for Lawrence. And so that's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. But it's just it's an exciting time for us.
I think it's very interesting because it's obviously we're getting phone calls from guys all the time. Hey, I want to get a truck. Where do I go? And there's other builders
for sure
that do really good stuff too. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting about where you guys are at is right. Number one is that you have a guy who's currently racing at the very top level, right? Because that's the difference. Is like, it's one thing to have a builder that's like, hey, that dude's fast sporadically, or used to be, like nothing against any of the guys who have aged out. Everybody's going to do that. But it's really cool to see, that type of program, because again, it reminds me of pavement, right? And, looking at all these programs in pavement, how well they're run, and, they have, top performing racers as a part of their program, and that data and that knowledge is trickling down, right? So that's what's interesting about the Herbst, the 1.9 chassis now, is that like you're handing somebody a championship winning vehicle in spec and in trophy truck. You're like, here it is. Here's the thing that we're winning in, right? Now you can go, have your performance in it, but just know that you're starting at that level. That's pretty incredible. That's pretty unique.
And for me and for Todd as well, it is our customers are everything to us. And and so we're still developing as well. So like if we put stuff on the Herbst trucks that we see, okay, no, that's better, that works, we're immediately on the phone to our customers and telling them the same thing we just put on the Herbst trucks. And the Herbst and them are competitors. So, and the Herbsts are all for that, and which makes it really, really nice. And then we start adapting it to all the new builds coming in, what we just learned. And so there's really no secrets. We don't hold anything back with the customer stuff because it's a competitive advantage. I mean, with the THM stuff, because it's a competitive advantage for our customers. We want our customers to do the best. I mean, Todd, to a good fault. Well, if a customer comes back, we've had issues with fuel cells over time. The fuel cells start cracking and they leak. It's just what happens in with every builder, and it's just what happens. So we've had a couple instances where one of the older trucks come back and they're like, it's a week before the race and the fuel cell's leaking, and we may not have one on the shelf because it takes us a while to get it from Fuel Safe. So Todd will go over to one of the Herbst trucks, pull it out of the Herbst trucks, and stick it in the customer trucks and until it's done, and then either put it back in or order another one for the Herbst trucks, and to make sure the customer can make it to the race. Like, what do you need? We're here for you.
Yeah.
From that aspect to the pit support aspect of it too. Like Tim and Troy, the first thing they tell me when it comes to pit support, is at all the races they're at, all of our customers, we share in the cost. There's no markup to anything. Tim's like, we're doing it for cost, because it only helps Tim out as well. So what we do is we take it and we split it. If we have 5 trucks we're pitting, the Herbsts have 3. And 2 customers there, we split the cost between 5. The Herbst will pay their portion of 3 trucks. The other 2 will pay their portion of the other 2 at cost. So, which is pretty freaking cool.
Attention, Off-Road Nation. It's time to prepare for war. The Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship comes ripping through Parker, Vegas, Reno, and Barstow in 2025. The biggest, baddest, and most prestigious desert off-road championship in the sport just got bigger. It all starts with the return of the Parker 400, January 15th to the 19th in beautiful Parker, Arizona. Then, it's the Super Bowl of off-road racing. The BF Goodrich Tires Mint 400 takes over Las Vegas March 5th through the 9th. Next, mark your calendars. It's a brand new race. The inaugural Reno 600 is coming this spring. Over 600 miles of Nevada desert racing. And finally, it's the exciting conclusion of the Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship, the 4th annual California 300 in Barstow, California, October 1st to the 5th. Visit unlimitedoffroadracing.com for complete details. The 2025 Unlimited Off-Road Racing Championship is coming. The future is unlimited.
It is. I mean, it just speaks to the Herbst. I mean, like, they're fantastic family, and it's always funny for me. Like, I'm, either interviewing or doing a podcast. I'm like, hey, how'd you get into off road? And so many of the current racers are like, well, I met Tim Herbst or I met Troy Herbst, and they talked me into this, right? And they've brought so many people into our sport. It's incredible. They've been incredible ambassadors of our sport. So I can't speak more highly of them,
It is an honor I've had the fortune to race with Troy and to be his teammate, and us obviously growing up racing against both Tim, Ed, and Troy, and all 3 of them are integral in what we've got going on. Ed's there probably the most out of anybody, and he's way into figuring out what we're doing next, what's happening, how do we make things better, especially for his son EJ, and then Tim's the same way. Troy comes there probably the second most, and Troy Troy loves the back end of everything. So he wants to make this even bigger. So he's like totally into like, how do we make the company bigger? What do we need to do? And obviously he's following he's gone every weekend following his son Riley racing in the Xfinity Series, which hopefully soon will be the Cup Series. But the relationship I have with all three of them is just so cool, and to always see that they always open their arms at the races. If anybody ever needs anything, they'll be the first to help them.
Sure.
They'll be the first to take the shirt off their back and say, "Here you go. Let us know if you need anything else. What can we do to help you?" I think that in itself, that was another big part for me. It's like, okay, am I making the right decision here, stepping into this? And
Right.
And that's a big part of me saying yes, of course, because I know, they always have open arms. I can always have an open conversation with them, whether I agree or disagree.
Right.
And we can have a conversation about it. So they're just great. They're great partners, and great bosses.
For you, what's been your favorite part about making this evolution in your career?
You know what? Being able to try to bring what I've experienced both with General Motors and the other side of things is my experience with Volkswagen when running and putting together and racing for another factory program with Volkswagen.
We should probably talk about the Tourex. It was a pretty incredible program.
It was obviously short-lived. Both the GM program and the Volkswagen program were short-lived, not because of anything besides the marketing decided to take the money and go elsewhere, which was a shame. But we accomplished all of our goals. But the Volkswagen side with things a little different than the GM side. The similarities, obviously you got two major manufacturers. On the Volkswagen side, it gave us the opportunity. The contract was with Volkswagen of America, but we also had a side contract with Volkswagen Germany and with Audi Sport in Germany. And to be able to with Audi, with Volkswagen Motorsport at the time, you're talking about the guys who are running the Dakar program, and then Audi Sport. These are the guys running the Audi Le Mans program. So these are two serious programs and big budget programs.
Right.
The Dakar program, probably $45-50 million program. The Le Mans program, probably just as much the same, if not more. So this is serious stuff. So we can't excuse my language, we can't fuck up. So this has to be legit. I remember going to Germany, having to meet with them, and the head of motorsport at the time, Chris Nissen. I remember his goal for not his goal for us, but his direction for us for the Baja 1000. He says, "I don't care what you do. The two things: first, we don't win the first race out." That was his words to me. He says, "We don't win the first race out. We have to finish." Because I don't care what you do to get that thing across the finish line, you have to finish. And he goes, if not, I cut your balls off. And sure as that, when he showed up to the Baja 1000, he had a machete. I think Sal Fish actually gave it to him. So
that's funny.
But it's like there was a lot of pressure there.
Sure.
But to be able to see how the Germans do things when it comes to motorsports, now I'm getting a taste of how they do things, how organized they are. And so that you start taking all this stuff and you're like a sponge and start seeing how it's supposed to be done right.
Right.
And then my goal coming into this was just starting to take everything I've learned throughout the years and see if I can mold it into our team. And we have, we're 29 employees now over at 19.
Right.
And so we've kind of created a little bit of a monster. And it's, unfortunately, and I've had this conversation with Todd too, fortunately, unfortunately, is we're no longer a 2-truck team.
Right.
And for the Herbst. So we kind of, you're forced to do things differently. You're forced to have organization. If you want checks and balances, you want things to run right, and you want to be successful, and so it forces you into that. But I think that's a good thing. That's a really good thing. There's a lot of the younger kids have a hard time understanding that, especially guys coming in that don't have a lot of experience with factory back programs. Kind of throws them off a little bit because you're asking them to do more than they typically would. You're asking them to have more checks and balances than they ever had in their life.
Yeah, I mean it's a euphemism for life, right? Like it's the more discipline you have, the more organized you are, the more successful you're going to be, right? And putting in that work ahead of time and being prepared when you arrive at the race is critical, right? And it used to be, as the sport grew, it used to be like, hey man, we can kind of wing it a little bit. And now it's not that way. Now the level of competition, everybody's got good equipment, people have good knowledge. Now, as you know, because you've almost won the Mint now 3 times, right?
I got a love-hate with it.
and it's like you're winning until the last few miles,
yep.
right? Because of a parts failure or whatever it was, right?
Yep.
And that's what I love about the current space that we're in right now is like, even as the promoter, I don't know who's going to win. Like I go, hey, here's a range of people.
Yeah.
But like all those people might break and have a bad day, and somebody from the back might win.
Yeah.
Right. And
which is kind of cool about our sport too.
it is.
Yeah.
It is. I always compare it to the UFC or MMA, where you're like, yeah, you can train, you can be perfect, but if you get clipped, you're going down.
Yep.
So it's exciting, but it's also, like I was saying before, like, or the question I was asking before is, what's your, obviously this, you're very passionate about this, but what's your favorite thing about the current evolution that you've gone through?
Well, I think my favorite thing is trying to help mold 19 Industries into something bigger and better. Not necessarily for the for us as owners, but for the entire company, and then beyond that, for our customers. And
Sure.
I said our customers are our backbone, and to be able to take and mold and it's exciting to me. It's like what more can we do for our customers? And then for us on the development side, it's like, okay, what's next for us? And obviously, we don't have an all-wheel drive out yet, and but that doesn't mean our wheels aren't turning and we're not taking steps right now to get to that direction, because we are. Are we there yet? No, not necessarily. The biggest struggle I have, and what makes me excited about the future, is once again, we're 10 trucks deep in production. Never will myself or Todd put our customers in jeopardy of not getting their vehicles to stop production to work on something else.
Yeah.
So you got to figure out how do I take a Y approach or a two-prong approach to making this work, because we have to develop. You always have to develop.
Absolutely.
But I don't want to hurt what we got going on right now. And so the challenge is exciting to me. The challenge of, okay, what's next? What are we doing tomorrow? And our sport's ever changing. So it's not like I'm not dealing with the same thing every day, and that excites me. And it's in a sport that I've grown up in, I've lived, that I had this passion for, and I said I'm living my dream. I'm at,
Yeah.
and the fact that I still get a chance to race and make a difference with our vehicles, to me, is massive, because if we do, then I'm gonna share that with all of our customers, and guess what? I got something that's gonna make you guys even faster.
Well, and listen, everybody wants to be a part of the winning team. Like too, that like, that's been some of the most successful teams on the pavement side is that they're, you're rubbing elbows with champions, right? When you want to ask, the guy who won Daytona prototypes how to apex a corner, he's going to give you the right answer, right? So it's interesting. And it's the same thing with this. And that's I could see the energy and the stimulation. And then obviously a lot of your customers are my customers, and Joe Brain and his kids came out and raced at the California 300, had a blast, and did really well.
Yeah.
And it was funny because they're like, hey, this is it's a technical course. It's got a big mix of everything. But at the end of it, they were all smiles. They're like, that was badass.
So Trevor, the oldest son, he works for us on the side, and so after the race weekend, I'm like, okay, how did it go? I mean, you couldn't get, the smile was way too big. He's like, we timed out. I told him beforehand. I said, all I want you to worry about when you go, and trust me, they had one of the best coaches out there with Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah.
And I said, all you have to worry about is just getting the truck to the finish line.
Yeah.
I said, first place, second place, fifth place, 20th place, doesn't freaking matter.
Yeah.
Just get it across the finish line, and I guarantee you'll have the time of your life.
Yep.
Then we work on the
then
next.
you can build.
Then we work on the next.
Yeah.
And obviously, like I said, they had a great coach with Ricky. I don't know how Ricky sits in those seats with anybody, but 'cause I personally can't say God bless that man. But it's awesome because these kids need that.
Yes.
And 100%. These are young kids.
Yeah.
And so I was so happy to see how much fun that they had. And I think who's having even more fun is the dad, Joe.
Yeah.
More so because you can't get the smile of Joe's face. He's loving watching his kids go race. Once again, that's what's awesome about our sport.
Yes. Yeah, it was cool. Ricky Johnson's, in my eyes, if not the best coach, one of the best coaches for off-road
100%.
racing.
Yeah.
And it was cool to see him out there, and he's not stressed out because he wasn't racing. He's like all relaxed and stuff. And, we were joking around and stuff. So it was cool to see that. And then, just the stoke, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny because I've been doing this long enough to see generations, grow through and, have it be the dad, and like Cole Hardin right now is coming into his own. Jack Olagus is coming into his own. You're seeing that evolution. That's really cool.
It's pretty cool too, as you see, especially trophy truck spec has really started molding these kids. Either they're coming, some of them are coming out of the UTV stuff now and then making the transition to trophy truck spec. But trophy truck specs really raised the bar of some of these kids in their driving ability to make the transition to trophy truck. Look at Povardi and what he was able to do, and then once he made that transition, he kind of fell right into place.
Oh yeah,
and that doesn't happen all the time, and it's not in trophy truck it's not easy. And Povardi will tell you the same thing. Obviously, same thing with Bryce and Luke, Andy and Dan and Lampudias and Vidosla is trophy truck in today's day and age. And you talked about it a little bit ago too. It is so competitive. It comes down to flat tires.
Oh, it's bonkers.
Which is massive. Our pace is so much different than it's been in years past, and the pace seems to be going faster and faster and faster, and the vehicles are getting more and more consistent. So once again, it's coming down to a flat tire, or how many did you have versus how many the guy who won had, and that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it is. It's exciting, and I'm excited for the future of it, and I'm really excited for what you guys are doing, because it's very necessary, not just from a customer service side, but man, we need more rentals. We need more. We need so much more.
Yeah.
And I would encourage people to go to some pavement races and look at how they're running their programs. Not because they're necessarily totally superior to us, but like there's lessons to be learned, right?
I can't agree with you more on that, 100%, Matt. You always got to open up your mind, especially if you want. At the end of the day, if you're racing UTVs, you're racing 1/2/1600s, you're racing Class 10 cars. There's to me, and there's two different racers. You got the ones that are out there just to have fun, and you got the ones that are serious about winning, and that goes to every single class. And it's a different mentality in how you go to a race. If you're there to race, or if I'm there to win. That's two different programs, two different people. And if you're there to win in any of the classes, then you need to absorb how other people are doing things. Whether you're just walking around and seeing how a trophy truck spec or a trophy truck team that's higher up does it, or you're going to an IndyCar race or a NASCAR race, just open your mind up and watch how they do things. It will be huge for your program moving forward. I promise that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And honestly, even for the guys who are just going to have fun, you're going to get knowledge that makes your experience more fun.
For sure.
Because the more you go in prepared, the more you can relax and not worry about things.
Exactly.
The guys who go in that are last minute about everything, it's gonna be stressful.
No, for sure,
and you're not gonna have success.
No, and that's the thing too. To your point, I mean, the guys that are going there just to have fun and to go finish. If you don't do things right, we talked about the preparation of these vehicles. Any of the vehicles, to me, like 70% of going and finishing a race or winning a race is how it left the shop.
Sure.
So if we don't do that right. Yeah. And you keep on breaking, and you're only there to have fun. You keep on breaking, and you keep on breaking. The fun factor is going to start going down and down.
It's not
and down. So
it's not fun. I mean that's the thing too. Like there's lots of ways to save money, right? But if you're like it just this, I'll use this as an example. Is like there was a part on the steering rack for Camberg that it was just
an O-ring?
An O-ring.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about cents. Right? And just that thing not only took them out of the race, but it ended their chance for a championship.
Yeah.
It was crushing.
Yep.
Right? So like those details and it's like it can't be overlooked. And it's difficult. That's what makes it cool and fun is that it's not easy, right?
It's not, and I put our sport up against any of the other sports that are out there as far as the difficulty level, and it's funny because I've had a lot of the road racing guys that have tried to make the transition over to the off-road side of things, and when they first get a chance to experience it, they're floored. They're like, "This is freaking awesome," and because truly it is a driver's sport. In NASCAR, you could be the best driver in the world. If that damn thing doesn't want to turn left, I don't care what you do. High, low, middle, less brake, more brake, shifting early, shifting late, doesn't want to turn left. you're going to go to the back.
Yeah.
You can take a good driver can take an average vehicle, or you don't have to have the best, and he still has a capability. As long as it's put together right, you have a capability going and winning. It brings the driver so much more into the equation than a lot of the other sports. Not to mention what we're asked to do. Like, sports car racing. Your longest stint in sports car racing is maybe 2 hours.
Yeah.
Vegas Reno. My stint was 8.5 hours.
Yeah.
And so that's 8.5 hours of doing everything I can as hard as I can. My brain's not turning off. My legs are working their asses off, and at the end, you're done. Physically, mentally, you're done. So it's like that's a whole other animal in itself. So, and that's and then you go to the Baja 1000. You could have 11. You could have a 16-hour stint.
Yep.
Like mentally, that's like you got to push through that stuff.
Yeah,
you got to learn to dig.
People have no idea. I mean, that's the fun thing about sharing it and exposing it to people is showing them this and having them like kind of realize it and go like, holy shit, like this is gnarly, right?
Yep.
And that's too what's great about it is like again as my new position, or not new, but my current position as a promoter, it's fun because you see these people go in to a race and then you see them come out and they're transformed.
Yep.
Right? And in many ways, they've pushed the limits for what they thought they were capable of, what they thought their team was capable of, the vehicle, so on and so forth. And, it's funny because I always get these phone calls, a couple days later when you kind of come down from that high level operational mode to like trying to get back into normal life, and normal life is pretty boring after that. You're like, okay, when's the next race, or what's the next thing that we can get to operating at this optimum level?
For sure.
So it's pretty cool.
No, it is, and it's funny because our sport truly is 3-dimensional. It is, and I don't know of another form of racing that is 3-dimensional as what we do, let alone a sport in general.
Yeah.
So it makes us unique in itself. I remember we have a loop video that we have at the shop, and I had a guy who was knee deep in NASCAR, did a lot of sponsorship stuff for NASCAR and for drag racing and for IndyCar racing, and I had he wanted to come see the shop. And I had the video playing in the background, and we're sitting there, we're talking, and I'm watching him, and he's sitting there staring at the footage, and it was incredible footage, obviously, and some of it's in slow mo. So you're watching this this trophy truck spec just work through the bumps, and I'm just sitting there watching him and talking to him at the same time, but his eyes never left the screen.
Yeah,
and so we're talking. We sat there for 30 minutes, and I told him at the time, I said, what do you think? And he says, it's phenomenal. I said, you realize you've watched that 4 times? And it's been the same video 4 times. He says, what? And I said, you just watched that 4 times.
Yeah.
So he says, there's no way. So what it's telling me is every time he's watching it, he's seeing something different.
100%.
And that's there's no other sport like that.
No.
It isn't.
I mean, obviously I'm biased. I agree with you that like, in the analogy I always use is one I stole from Rogan, which is like, it's like 3D chess.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, if you're a driver, you're in the vehicle, right? You're driving your ass off. You have your mental and physical, challenges that you're dealing with. Then you're trying to, ascertain how far you could push the vehicle, what's going on the, on the race course, who's in front of you, who's behind you, like, where can you get around guys? Like it's really, really all consuming and like you said, multi-dimensional. It's not just like, okay, we're on lap 5 of 500. Like we got to get around these couple. It's way more than that. So it's really cool. And it's like, it's almost like a Jedi level when you start operating as a racer at the highest level, and I've watched these evolutions of racers, come in, from other forms of racing, or they've moved up the ladder, and then they hit a certain point. You're like, okay, they've got all these calculations going on, and they're figuring out, and they're making decisions based on this whole grouping of things, not just like what's going on in front of them, right?
Yep.
So it's a really cool thing.
And yeah, I said, and it is. I said the evolution is amazing. So, shock technology, the evolution of that is phenomenal. Obviously, the tire technology is phenomenal. What we're asking these vehicles to do for the length of time we're asking them to do it, it still blows me away. This is my 32nd year of driving. I learn something new or something to change every time I'm in the truck. No questions asked, and I keep evolving my skill. And I don't know everything. I have a lot of experience, but I don't know everything because I don't know what the vehicle sometimes it wants of me. Sometimes it wants something different at the Mint than it does at the Baja 1000. Sure. And so you have to figure out how to adapt to it, and then you make a change. And so that in itself is pretty rad. And so
you've had some pretty massive wins, Baja 1000, Vegas to Reno, other races as well. They're notable races. What do you feel like you have left to prove as a driver?
For me, it's winning. So I'm not done with it yet. The Baja 1000 obviously has always been our Super Bowl, obviously, and I've been fortunate enough to win it 3 different times, and it's been a while since I've won it before, and I'm ready to win it again. And I know we have the opportunity to do that, and we're trying to find ways to see if we can run the 32 truck more and get it back to Baja, and figure out how I go, because part of me, I want to show that a 2-wheel drive can still go beat a 4-wheel drive. Sure. And whether that's the case or not, is still yet to be seen. Everyone, the naysayers will say, no, it can never be done again.
Yeah. It's good. That's a good topic and not to cut you off.
No.
But okay. So they're winning in Baja, but it hasn't won the Mint. It did. The 4-wheel drive did win Parker. Mm-hmm. Has won the California 300. Mm-hmm. We got a new race coming, Reno 600, which is going to be, it's going to be a beast, right?
Yeah.
And so same thing. And so I agree with you. I think that there's still the rougher, more technical races that have yet to be conquered by all-wheel drive trucks. And then you look at your package, right? What's interesting about the 19 Industries package is the top speed.
Yep.
It is the fastest chassis. It is the fastest program out there, right? Yep. So when you get into those long stretches on dry lake beds, on long rally roads, there's a significant gain there.
Yeah, the fastest I've ever been in an off-road vehicle has been in a 19 truck, and it was in Kyle Washington's 32, and it was with Gibbs, the Gibbs Power, and it was at the Mint 400, and it was 159 miles an hour down the lake bed. We were so close to clicking 160, and that's insane in one of our trucks, and it's going so fast. The truck's moving down the lake bed, so you're not going straight, and it's just very slight inputs in the steering wheel, not to grab anything. But then I'm sitting there watching the limiter, and we're bouncing off the limiter because we're pushing so much air. The rear tires are spinning.
Yeah,
they're not getting grip, and it's an amazing feeling. That's the fastest I've been in a trophy truck. Doesn't matter what it is. I've pretty much driven them all with all the different power plants. But it's pretty freaking amazing. But I said, you look at courses like the Mint 400. That's a perfect example. Is the 2-wheel drives, I think, excel there. Where we need to figure out how to bridge the gap, and what that is, we're still working through, is where we struggle is qualifying. So especially when you're starting from a dead stop, and it's I would love to see that beacon start 200 yards down. At least let us get up to speed, because all of our speed's lost from 0 to 60, 80 miles an hour. After that, then the 2-wheel drive will start kicking in, no problems. But it's just that initial get going. Same with all the score races. You see all the Masons, and Neil and Robert do a phenomenal job. They build a beautiful piece, and they're kicking everyone's asses in trophy truck. There's no question about that. And but if I can figure out this qualifying thing, me personally, once the green flag drops, doesn't matter what race I'm in, as long as I can get the qualifying into a group that I know is fast enough to be able to compete against a win, I know I can win. So I know we can do it with this truck, but it's just getting over that qualifying hurdle.
Sure.
And so we're working. A big jump for us was Fox Live Valve, and for the 32, that was massive. And my relationship with Fox was, to be able to see the development of what they've done with shocks.
It's pretty incredible.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they're only scratching the surface right now, which is even more rad. They're learning stuff every single day. So every time we go test that truck, it's like they got a whole new slew of different parameters. They spent weeks on the dyno. They got different programming, and I think one time we've touched a tube on the shock. It's all been programming, and it's just neat to be able to see the evolution of our sport go that direction.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
and it's cool because the tech story that I love telling is hey, this was developed for racing, and it's in your Raptor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then eventually it makes it into other vehicles too. So that part of it's really cool.
Yeah, and it's neat too, because obviously we're with our customer trucks, because the customers, like when I go through a new build with a customer, the first thing they'll ask me is like, what do you recommend?
Right.
And I want to be honest with them. So
Sure.
I'm not pushing an agenda at all, because it's at the end of the day, it's what they want. All I can do is give them my opinion on certain things, or tell them, don't go that direction because of this. Don't waste your money. But they'll ask me, and a lot of them ask me, okay, what do you think of live valve? The next two trucks that are leaving our shop, chassis 36 and 37, will both have live valve on them.
Yeah.
And they're both trophy truck specs, and they're super excited to have that technology in there.
Yeah.
So it's really neat to see that evolution, and the fact that Fox is to a point now where they're actually offering the live valve to sell.
Yeah.
So they've actually made it over that next hurdle and say, okay, now we're ready for the general public.
Right. It is incredible. They've done an incredible job in the evolution of shock technology, and it's been really exciting. They test the first race they tested it at was the Mint, with Rob back and Wayne, when Wayne was still there. So that was a really cool thing to showcase and be like, all right, people, pay attention. We're making some history here. So that's really cool. But back to what do you winning? But are there races that you're like, hey, I need this one. I need this one.
And I'm glad you brought that back up again, because besides winning the 1,000 again, the one race that I have to check off in my box is the Mint 400. And I said I do have a love-hate with it. I love to hate it, and I hate to love it. So I've had, to your point, we've been in position to win that thing 3 times, and for whatever reason the stars didn't line. God just said it wasn't your day, and we have it. We know we can do it, and for what I just don't know what it is. I just need to get that monkey off my back. But we've been so close. So I 100%, because the history of that race in general, it has the history of the Baja 1000.
Well, your family has history.
My family has history with it, and it's one of the gnarliest, roughest races we do. It's a loop race for us, and lap 1 is so different than lap 2. Lap 3 and 4 are absolutely grinding. And I remember this year's Mint 400, the last lap on it, after we had our alternator issues, and we're trying to catch Adam back again. And I remember going through one of the cross sections of 3 or 4 foot bumps. It's as far as you can see.
Yeah.
And I remember Travis, my navigator, he's trying to read the notes to me, but he can't breathe.
Yeah.
Every hit that we have in one of those bumps, because the course got so bad, it's taken his breath out of him. He says, "Man," he goes, "I'm having a hard time." I said, "Just quiet. You're fine. We're just going to get through this."
Yeah. Isn't it crazy though? Like when we first started using that course, I was concerned. I was like, I know Prim, I know Gene. It's rough. It's nasty. Frankly, before that, the Prim 300 was a race that everybody looked at and went, I don't want to do that one. Right.
Yep.
And so, at first it was complete survival, right? But now it's a sprint race. And we just went through this with Barstow where, we had a 70-mile loop, and we were like, okay, we're going to be, an hour and, 30, 40 minutes, right? And then they come around an hour 20, and you're like, holy cow, how are they going so fast, right? And it's just a testament to the equipment. Just in our tenure as, the last decade, seeing the evolution of tires, moving up to 40s, the suspension, and the speeds that we're able to achieve over that terrain, incredible.
No, it does. It blows me away. I mean, that's my point. I mean, you won't see anything nastier on any course in the world than the lap 4 at the Mint 400, and you switch from somewhat of a race mode to a survival mode because I mean we have the baddest vehicles on the planet, and with the most suspension out there that works the best of anything, and it's beating the shit out of you for a lap, and it separates. It separates the men from the boys, the girls from the women, and because you got to figure out how to dig deep, and you got to figure, okay, I got to get this thing to the finish line. It hurts bad, but I got to keep pushing. So you got that mental switch in you, and I try to tell this to my wife too. She goes, because I go on, when I train, I cycle a lot, both my mountain bike and my road bike, and she goes, well, why don't you just go for 30 minutes? And I'm like, no, I need to go for hours. And I'm like, she's like, why? And I'm like, because I need that mental switch when I'm hurting an hour 1 to get me to hour 2. And it's a grind to get over there, especially with whatever the train is. It's the same mentality in our sport. When the going gets tough, you got to figure out how to make that switch so you can get yourself to that finish line. And sometimes that survival is also in race mode where I need to pick up the pace. I don't know if I can physically do this. The truck will take way more than I can do as a human being. But you got to figure out how to push that envelope.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's one of the things that's kind of overlooked in our sport is not just the mental toughness, but the physical readiness, right? And being in shape, and it plays out. You can see. The fatigue set in with some racers and the racers who are in shape, they're able to go harder for longer, Oh,
100%. And it's not just the driver too. I mean, the navigators now, Travis Moores who rides with me. Travis is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier about races coming down to flat tires.
Right.
So your navigator now plays a huge role because he's solely doing the tire change by himself. We're inside operating the jacks, but he's doing everything himself. So the difference between a minute to a minute 15 tire change and a 2 to 2.5 minute to 3 minute tire change is track position. Because if you just got passed by 1 or 2 guys, your race could be done.
Yep.
So that's massive nowadays. And you look at guys that are trying to perfect that with the McMillans and Bryce and the Vidolsas, all the top guys. That's such an important role in that right seat, and it also goes with all the lower classes as well. That's an important position, not just for you as a navigator, but as a guy that help get you out of a situation the quickest as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, it's interesting. Again, it's like this evolution that's happened where, a decade ago you could get away with, certain things. Now it's like, yeah, if you have a half-assed co-driver, you're in the back.
100%.
You know what I mean?
I could change a transmission still win a race.
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
You can't, there's no way.
Yeah, or multiple flats, you know what I mean? It's not
100%. So, but it goes back to how three-dimensional this sport is, like we talked about before. I mean, there's just so many elements and nothing's the same.
Yeah,
nothing's
the
same.
And it's funny again. It gets proven every race. It's like we're sitting there at the finish line of the California 300, and Cole Hardin comes across first. And we're like, in my head, I'm like, all right, well, before I congratulate this kid, this is a huge win for him, I got to look at the times. And then I walk over to timing and scoring, and they're like, Olagus is coming. I'm like, oh my God. And what's the split, right? And it's like, I think it was less than a minute. It's, over a 300-mile race, right? So
in Barstow. So to boot, yeah. No, it's
pretty gnarly.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That it just goes back to why I love this sport, why I'm so passionate about being in this sport, because it's different.
Yeah.
The California 300 is a different animal than going to the Mint 400, than going to Parker, than me going to the Baja 1000. I mean, every one of these has their uniqueness. Going to Vegas to Reno, Vegas to Reno is not necessarily the roughest race we have in the calendar, but it's one of the toughest races we have in the calendar because of triple digit heat. because it's hard on the drivetrain and in the distance. It was 555 miles this year, so that has its own element. So everything is different.
Even people, I don't think people understand how difficult it is to stay focused, just for an hour of racing. Yep. Let alone 6 hours of racing, right? Mm-hmm. And the modulation of things. That's the other thing that I always found remarkable. Of you go from super intense. Okay, you're doing a lot of input. You're turning. You're all over the place to okay, now we're we're on a dry lake bed, we're on a long stretch, and then you've got to be able to reel back into that intensity as soon as you're done with that, right?
Yep.
So the ebb and flow of it is pretty wild.
100%. The most stressful I am in the race truck, and people are probably going to be in disbelief when I say this. The most stressful I am is in a speed zone. That's the most stressful I am in that thing. Are we over under? Keep it at 25. Keep it at 27. Keep it at 60. It's the most stressful. I'm like, get me back to racing again.
Right.
This sucks.
Yeah. No, totally. Well, that was awesome. I know we only scratched the surface, but thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for having me, buddy. I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting us talk about 1.9.
Absolutely.
Incredible. Anybody guys has any questions, please reach out to us. Come for a shop tour. Come see what we have going on over there. It's pretty phenomenal. We're out in Fountain Valley in Southern California, but our doors are always open. And I said, we love our customers. We'll do anything for any one of them. And we look forward to more success moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate it.